We're going to teach them how to run away from an alligator, okay? If they escape prison, how to run away. Don't run in a straight line. Run like this. And you know what? Your chances go up about 1%. Okay.
Welcome to Alligator Alcatraz, where everyone is welcome. You see what I did there? Chomp, chomp, chomp. We have the greatest gators. Nobody's ever seen gators like this. I get along very well with them, by the way, but we have the greatest and biggest and strongest alligators with the biggest teeth.
Alligator Alcatraz versus North Carolina State Prison System. Let's talk about the real elephant, or should I say alligator, in the room: cost.
Instead of asking why so much, maybe we should ask why so little. Why are our baseline standards for incarceration so broken that we only react when the price tag finally reflects the real human cost?
Let's reframe the debate. It's not about spending less. It's about expecting more and finally demanding transparency, decency, and real reform across the board. You guys, thank you for hanging with us. I think the numbers are going to shock you on this one. So let's ask our state officials, why aren't they complaining about the yearly budgets and costs to operate state prisons? And today we will be focusing mainly on North Carolina State Prison and honing in on North Carolina Correctional Institute for Women.
Instruction. Joining us right now is Governor Ron DeSantis here in the great state of Florida. You came up with this idea in the last couple of weeks, right? For Alcatraz or Alligator Alcatraz. Explain.
Well, when you want to have deportation of illegal aliens, there's a process that DHS has to go through to vet, to process, and then to stage them for removal.
Right.
And, we've got jails, and our sheriffs and police are working. The state of Florida is all in on President Trump's mission. And obviously you have ICE operations, but that's not enough. And so there needs to be more ability to intake, process, and then deport. So this answers that. This is going to be able to have more than 3,000 illegals can be processed through here. We've got a massive runway right behind us where any of the federal assets, if they want to fly these people back to their own country, there's a process that DHS has to go through to vet, to process, and then to stage them for removal.
Right.
And, we've got jails, and our sheriffs and police are working. The state of Florida is all in on President Trump's mission. And obviously you have ICE operations, but that's not enough. And so there needs to be more ability to intake, process, and then deport. So this answers that. This is going to be able to have more than 3,000 illegals can be processed through here. We've got a massive runway right behind us where any of the federal assets, if they want to fly these people back to their own country, they can do it one-stop shop.
And those who've lost loved ones inside prisons, a major issue that pay for those who serve and protect. Well, that's changing. The North Carolina State Senate unanimously passed the Prison Reform Act this month.
911, how may I help you? We got 3 officers that are severely hurt. They're on the ground.
This is Pasquotank Correctional Institution. Inside, 4 staff members brutally attacked and murdered during an attempted prison escape.
This was a violent place and still didn't think that it would be as violent as it was.
This is Bertie County Correctional Facility. Inside, Sergeant Megan Callahan was hit with the
idea of the kind of stress and strain matters. It's just, and
biggest problem.
Because of our staffing situation,
The system's biggest problem.
because of our staffing situation, we are currently in what is known as a jail backlog.
Meaning offenders are forced to stay in local jails rather than enter state prisons. That's because some prisons have a 25% staffing shortage. Little says a step pay plan needs to be implemented because as of now, staff hired with no experience are making the same amount as a veteran correctional officer.
We try to do everything we can to communicate to our staff how important they are to us.
All right, you
Can we
guys.
do a
So
better-
today we are talking about. Sorry, let me get this right. So today we are talking about Alligator Alcatraz. And, you know, the number one thing that I've heard from Congress members, other people that are opposing this prison system, or it's more of an ICE detention center, which I think it could be used as a prison, you know. So I really wanted to go back and look at how much it's costing per year. And I think we're going to go through all that information. And Mary Beth was kind enough to do a flow chart for us that we can take a look at together. And so it's kind of interesting how it goes. So the first thing in the middle, we're going to talk about the public and media focus, why Alligator Alcatraz dominates headlines, right? We're going to talk about how much annually, and remember, this is a new project, so it just got off the ground. So always the projected costs are going to be more as far as taking care per inmate capita than it would be if it had more inmates or stuff like that. So we're going to get into all of that. So if we start in the middle, media or public and media focus, why Alligator Alcatraz dominates headlines. And I would have to say the number one reason would probably be due to the cost. Everyone's screaming and hollering about the cost.
Interesting to dive into that and see what people have to say.
It will be really interesting. So I thought we'd go ahead and go, and I did green paper. For my notes and all of that in light of the alligator. So I just really wanted to get in spirit with it. So I really want to talk about these people that are screaming human rights. So, and I will share a story with you. So if you saw in the intro, it kind of went through, and that was from 2024. That was the first video compilation that Big Russ ever made. He has been so instrumental in helping me when we first started this podcast, February 2nd, 2024, which was celebrating the life of my father, and that's his birthday. So I said all that to say this, that, you know, I had some run-ins with the law here in West Virginia, and I was actually blameless on the situation. I did serve time in Raleigh, North Carolina, in North Carolina Correctional Institute for Women. So I'm very familiar with that area, and I'm very familiar with the prison system there too. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about let's talk Turkey. So for Alligator Alcatraz, estimated to cost $450 million annually to operate. And so we got that resource from Reuters. It's designed to house up to 5,000 detainees. Estimated cost per inmate annually, if full, is $90,000 per inmate. So it's not a part of a state system. It's privately contracted, federally run. All right, so let's go on to the next one. North Carolina Correctional Institute for Women. Now, this is just the women's prison, right? This isn't the whole state prison system. And let me give you a little backdrop on North Carolina Correctional Institute for Women. It has no air conditioning, no climate control, but heat.
That definitely adds a whole other layer to the conversation, right? The conditions inside the facilities and how that compares to the cost. It's wild to think that a place could cost so much to operate and still not have basic amenities like air conditioning. So let's dive into all those details and compare the two.
Let's do, because I think people genuinely, if they don't know, they just don't know. So one of the chief complaints is that Alligator Alcatraz has no climate control nor air conditioning. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, from what I've heard, it seems like that facility really does have some issues with climate control.
Factually or not?
I don't have the exact details off the top of my head.
Okay, that's all I needed. Thank you so much. So let's go back to North Carolina. So the average North Carolina Correctional Institute for Women houses approximately 1,288 inmates. That's just the women's prison. Average annual cost per inmate in North Carolina is $55,000. And that was as of the fiscal year 2023-2024. I served my time there from 2014 to 2015. And then I went to minimum security and served out. No, I'm sorry. From 2014 to 2015. And then I served out the rest of my sentence in minimum security to 2016, and then I did, of course, my county time before that. So a lot of stuff, and the county jails that I saw in Mount Airy, North Carolina. Let's talk about Surrey County. Let's talk about, I was in the old Cabarrus County jail, and that was pretty bad before renovations were done and they built a new jail.
Absolutely. One of the big reasons Alligator Alcatraz costs more is likely because of the private contracting and the specialized security measures involved, especially since it's a federal detention center. And sometimes private facilities have higher overhead costs, and that gets passed on. So it definitely makes for an interesting comparison when you look at state budgets versus federal and private ones.
Well, and let's talk about that. So in that budget, I'm guessing in North Carolina, because we'll never really know for sure. I will tell you that prison in North Carolina is big business. There was a lot of corruption going on in the prison system. They changed wardens. It was a bunch. And I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole because it was so long ago. So it doesn't matter. What matters is now, right? So back when they had just built the Robbins Center, which was a medical facility, right? So how much was the budget for when they built the Robbins Center, the medical facility at North Carolina Correctional Institute for Women? And I just wanted to add a special note here that I myself had to go to the medical facility because I broke my wrist in prison. And I'll tell you that funny story another time. Well, I said the reason I'm bringing this up is because my husband had told them, hey, we have insurance, we have health insurance, and they were like, oh no, we have to pay for it. Like, how much sense does that make? They have kept things so separate that my burden of me breaking my wrist was on the North Carolina state taxpayer when it never should have been. We had health insurance, so why wasn't there a way to bill our health insurance? It was almost as if they didn't care.
I couldn't find the exact construction cost for the Robbins Center at the North Carolina Correctional Institution for Women. However, similar facilities have varied costs. For instance, a 624-bed dormitory with a 40-cell segregation unit was estimated to cost about $26.3 million, according to the North Carolina Department of Public Safety.
Yeah, and I will tell you that one of those single cell units does not have air conditioning, and I highly doubt they've gotten air conditioning between now and then. So I'm still confused as to what the complaint here is. So let's keep talking about that. So $2 billion a year versus $400 million. So what do you think the projected cost? We talked about the new infrastructure costs, right? So that was included in the first fiscal year when they are adding the cost per inmate, right?
Exactly. So when they factor in all those initial infrastructure costs, especially in that first fiscal year, it definitely drives up the per inmate cost. Over time, that should, in theory, level out and become a bit more stable. But it's always interesting to compare how those numbers look in the beginning versus once everything is up and running and more established.
All right, so let's give them a little backstory and history to North Carolina Correctional Institute for Women and then the other prison systems. So North Carolina Correctional Institute for Women started out as a men's work camp. Am I correct?
Yes, that's right. It originally started out as a men's facility before being converted to serve as the primary women's prison in North Carolina. It has a long history and has evolved significantly over the years, and each change definitely adds a layer to the story of how the prison system in the state has developed.
Agreed. And I will tell y'all, most prisons are built over burial grounds and cemeteries and crazy lunatic stuff like that. So total inmates in North Carolina, 31,836. Now remember, the inmates, it only houses 5,000 detainees at Alligator Alcatraz. And I think the facility's built to where it could hold more, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's always that potential for expansion or for increasing capacity if needed. And it does make for an interesting comparison when you look at how many inmates are housed statewide versus in a single facility. It really puts those numbers into perspective.
So, and allow me to say one other thing. And when I was doing my time in Raleigh, in NCCIW, we a lot of times we didn't have water. There was no hot water. There definitely was no air conditioning, except in certain units in the administrative halls that connected the different, I forget what they called them, dorms or whatever. So, I mean, that's a thing to consider too. So, I don't think that because they're not spending the money to fix it. And if they're getting the money to fix it, where is that money going, right? So truly, the budget that they have is not really realistic as to what needs to be done for these prisons to be up to the standards that everyone expects Alligator Alcatraz to be up to, right?
Yeah, that's such a good point. There's definitely a lot of nuance when it comes to where the funding actually goes and how it's allocated. Sometimes there's a disconnect between the budget on paper and the actual living conditions or the improvements that happen on the ground. It definitely raises questions about transparency and accountability in both systems.
So we never intended this video to go very long, and I'm probably not going to do a whole lot of editing. I don't know. I've already started building the video as it's stated, or up to this point. So I don't know what'll come off the cutting room floor. You guys, I just really wanted to talk about this. And, you know, it really bothers me that, you know, we focus so much on the federal level. What can the federal level do for us? Or this is what we needed to do. But when we're not even looking in our own states. And then you have people that aren't even from your home state that are saying, well, I need to go run for that office to help them out. Or they haven't lived, they're no longer a resident of the state. I mean, I don't understand what's going on here. Pick a state, stick to it, right? I'm originally from West Texas. I always thought I would go back to Texas, but, you know, my husband and I are together in North Carolina. I loved North Carolina when we got the opportunity to come to West Virginia. I mean, I couldn't turn it down. It's so beautiful here. And that's just my personal preference. So I said all that to say, I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just asking us to consider more than, you know, the fear mongering and, oh my goodness, what's going to happen. And so you guys stay tuned for my next piece, because that's going to be shadow banned. Shadow banned. Have you been shadow banned? So we're going to be doing all that. You guys, coming up on the 4th of July holidays, we are celebrating our 249th year as a nation. Let's keep it together and get to 250, and that would be next year. You guys, we thank you for watching. My name is Regina Connell. We will see you on the flip flop.
That was a perfect wrap up, Regina.